Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burckhardt. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is September 3rd, 2025, and once again, we have got a fantastic author for you. If you were ever a fan of Judy Blume books when you were growing up, you are really going to love today's episode. But there's also so much more besides Judy Blume talk. We also discuss fashion and diamonds, pop culture, and so much more. But don't forget to stick around till the very end because I do have a few little announcements. But for now, let's get on with today's episode. So why don't you just sit back and relax and enjoy this interview with an amazing writer and author, Rachelle Bergstein. If you've listened to any of our episodes, you know that I always like to start out by just having our guests tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Rachelle Bergstein. I'm an author, a journalist, and an editor. And my most recent book, which I'm here to discuss, is The Genius of Judy: How Judy Blume Rewrote Childhood for All of Us.
Now, you are actually quite a prolific writer.
Yeah, I mean, it's my favorite thing to do, so I have managed in my time to put out a lot of work.
When did you actually start with the New York Post?
That's a great question. I started freelancing with them. So I had my son, and he's about to be 10, so this is a bit of a time ago. And I started writing about books for them. So their book coverage is really specific. You read nonfiction books, and then you kind of find the best, most exciting details and make an article out of them. So I was doing that, and I was looking for something more steady. And I ended up reaching out to an editor who really liked my work and asked if there were any full-time positions. And in 2019, 2018 or 2019, I started working there full-time as a features reporter.
And when did you start actually being an editor as well?
I believe that was so it must have been 2018 that I started because I started editing there in 2019. I ended up covering for a colleague who got pregnant and was going out on maternity leave, and she handled the style and beauty section. And my boss asked me if I might be able to cover it for her. And it was quite a leap of confidence because while I had done a lot of editing in the book publishing world, I had never edited a newspaper section, which, if you're familiar with a tabloid, it's very visual, it's kind of a puzzle. You have to figure out where everything goes to cover the whole layout. So I was nervous about it, but it was also a really cool opportunity, and I ended up really enjoying it.
I think that's one thing that a lot of people who have never worked for a newspaper or magazine do not understand about writing to size.
Yes, column width is absolutely a thing.
And it's so hard to do the proper word count to fit all the information that you want in there to a specific column amount.
Yes, and now, I mean, everything is online as well. So you're running maybe one version online where you have kind of infinite space or at least more space.
Hmm.
And then at the last moment, you're trimming it to fit the column. So it can be a little bit frantic, but it's a really interesting editing exercise, like if you don't let the stress get to you, it's pretty cool to just figure out like what words you can drop or what sentence you can drop and not change the meaning. So yeah, I liked it. I also liked when she came back, by the way, because it had been exhausting and I was having dreams about, assigning stories and where they were going to go and when they were going to run. And I was like, okay, I'm happy for a break from this.
With that kind of experience in doing this editing, how did that help you whenever you went to write your own books?
I think editing other people's writing, it allowed me to let go of some of the preciousness around my own writing, if that makes any sense.
Definitely.
I think when I started out as a writer, as many people are, I was kind of insecure and editing felt like criticism.
Hmm.
And even though intellectually I knew that it wasn't, there was something that was hitting emotionally that felt like, oh, I didn't do my job right, or oh, like I'm not good at this. And working for a daily newspaper, it took care of all of that. I mean, in so many different ways, like you can't be overly precious or overly obsessed with your writing because it's got to publish. It publishes quickly. And then also, when you're editing other people, you see that every writer makes the same kind of mistakes and every writer needs a hand. So now, whether I'm working with an editor or with my agent on the editorial process, I'm like so much more collaborative and excited to get feedback than I used to be. And I think that's really an important development in any writer's career to be like, you can't do everything by yourself. And you reach a certain point in your process where you've looked at a piece so long that you actually cannot be objective. So you need other people to weigh in.
And I still find, even though I have worked for like magazines and newspapers and done books and everything, I still find myself, as soon as somebody goes, okay, well, I wanted to talk to you about some of these issues. I'm like, issues?
Yeah, right.
It's like, what do you mean I have issues? It's like, but then I always tell myself, it's like, just calm down, listen.
I think there's always a moment when you're in your first draft. Tell me if this resonates with you. That you have to tell yourself that it's like a masterpiece, right? In order
Mhm.
to get through the uncomfortable process of putting words to paper for the first time. It's like you have to somehow trick yourself into believing like what you're doing is amazing. And
Yes.
then there's always that like crash landing of like, no, it's like every other first draft and it needs work. But I do know what you mean where you're like, well, what do you mean it needs a polish or it needs another draft? Like I thought I was doing great here, but you have to get over it.
And I hope that there will come a day that I lose that first initial knee-jerk reaction and don't have to keep talking myself down to listen to the constructive criticisms with a more open mind from the first moment. But knowing me, I doubt that will ever happen.
I think it varies project to project too. Like there are some projects where I feel really confident and then when I get that feedback, I'm kind of like, yeah, we're a team and we're making this better. And then there are others that I feel more, for whatever reason, they're closer to the bone. I'm feeling more sensitive that I have to kind of take a deep breath. But yeah, I mean it's a journey being edited and being a writer and editing people and trying to figure out ways to do it where you're not going to hurt their feelings. And
Mhm.
I will say that working in the close-knit quarters of a daily tabloid, like people, tensions run high. You're working alongside people, everybody's in a rush, you're being asked to pivot a lot. You don't always have time to be as like cautious with people's feelings or sensitive as you want to be. And it's sort of a crazy, intense emotional experience, like with your team. You get very close, but there are definitely like there's friction.
Yeah. I know for me, mine just stems from the fact that I'm a ridiculous control freak and I need to learn to let go of things like that sometimes. I have been reading through some of your selected writing that you have on your website, and even just some of the titles of these are amazing. It's like my favorite ones are the ones in your humor section. TikTok's viral Amazon butt crack leggings make me feel naked. I made ketchup and mustard cake, and I've never regretted anything more, which even thinking about that sounds, yeah.
The ketchup and
And
mustard cake was disgusting. It really
I
was.
would expect it to be.
Yeah.
Although I have had a pork and bean cake that was ridiculously good. So you never
Oh,
know until you try it.
you never know until you try it.
But the one that really gets me is the adulting calendar rewards grown ass adults with stickers. And I know I am easily motivated by stickers.
I mean, these are classic internet tabloid headlines, right? You want to click. You can't not click on adulting calendar rewards grown ass adults with stickers. So yeah, I always liked writing a little bit funny, but working at the Post brought that out in me. And I don't even know what character I became when I wrote some of these pieces, but it's in there. The viral butt crack leggings I wrote during the pandemic. And all of these women on TikTok were buying these leggings with, if you're not familiar with the butt crack leggings, they have like a seam up the butt crack.
Hmm.
And so they accentuate it. And I bought them for this piece and I put them on and I couldn't believe how like vulgar they felt. And I'm not pretty like that. I love a mini skirt or a short short. But yeah, there was something about them that was like, oh my God, I really do feel so exposed in these. And I popped off.
You write in all of these different categories with style and families, pop culture, history, humor. Which one is your favorite to cover?
That's such a good question. I really love writing about pop culture, and I find that that's what I'm doing a lot right now with my journalism, writing about things that people are talking about. So I get really excited when I see some consistency in terms of what my friends are talking about and what people are talking about on social media and what's getting shared. And that's how my perimenopause piece came about. I pitched my editor at the Washington Post and I said, all of a sudden, I'm getting fed so many videos on Instagram about menopause and perimenopause, and not just videos about the experience of those things, but also products related to those things. And I know that, I'm in my early 40s and I'm sort of in the age range now where targeting ads are going to try to get me and draw me in. But also, all of my friends were starting to talk about perimenopause in this way that I just felt was really new. And so, she and I put our heads together and we came up with this piece, which is about the perimenopausal moment, which is that celebrities, women, people on social media are suddenly talking about menopause and perimenopause in a way that used to be completely taboo.
Hmm.
So, yeah, those are my favorite things to write about. Like, what are people talking about and why?
I have to say, I am so happy to hear so many women talking about these things now, especially about how it hits them emotionally, because there are so many people in my generation and older that we just went through this stuff and had no idea what was going on with us because nobody told us, yeah, this is going to happen to you. And we were just kind of like figuring it out on our own. It's so wonderful that people are talking about this more.
I couldn't agree more. And especially, I mean, we can say a lot of negative things about celebrities, I think, but I am really impressed that women like Halle Berry, like Naomi Watts, who have been famous for so long, are coming out and talking about their menopause journeys. Like, in a world that really looks down on women and especially women in Hollywood for aging.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that was a very exciting piece for me. And I do think, it got shared a lot. Like it resonated with people because they were recognizing that this is something that's going on too. I also, as someone who's written about Judy Blume, the meme that people send me the most is a tile on Instagram where people say that they want Judy to write about Margaret from Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret in menopause,
Oh, that
right?
would be
So like,
brilliant.
yeah, so there's like a need for this, the way Judy Blume kind of broke down taboos about talking about menstruation. People are like now in this moment where they want someone to break down the taboos of talking about menopause.
That would be amazing. I would almost imagine that would be an instant bestseller.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think she's going to do it. Judy has said that she's retired from writing fiction, but hopefully someone out there is going to write the book that people feel really captures the menopausal journey. I mean, I know the New York Times called All Fours by Miranda July the first perimenopausal novel, and I loved that book. It's weird, but it's amazing.
So here you had such a great career going on, writing all of these articles. What inspired you to write your first book, Women from the Ankle Down, The Story of Shoes and How They Define Us?
So back then, I was working at a literary agency and I was also trying to be a writer. I wanted to write a book, I wanted to have a career in book writing. And I had written a novel in my 20s that I had kind of put all of this loaded hope and faith into, thinking that this was going to be my breakout moment, and it wasn't. My agent sent it around. People had very complimentary things to say about it, but nobody bit to publish it. And that was pretty devastating. And then I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, and I was having at least some success online writing about style and fashion just because I'm interested in it personally.
Hmm.
And I was sitting on a train. This is going somewhere, I promise. I was sitting on a subway with my boss's husband, who is a writer, and he was working on a very long book. And I asked him how the editing was going, and he said, it's hard because every time I take out a sentence, I put in two to replace it. And I just totally off the cuff said something like, well, that's kind of like when I clean out my shoes. Every time I get rid of one pair, I buy two.
Hmm.
And he looked at me with this kind of spark in his eye and he said, I don't know if anyone's ever done an interesting commodity history on shoes. And we just chatted about it on the train until we got to the book party we were going to. And I decided to just go to the New York Public Library and poke around and see if there was anything interesting there. And sure enough, I really liked the topic. I mean, I loved looking at beautiful shoes. I loved talking about beautiful shoes. And
Hmm.
to me, once I started doing the research, I felt that there was a narrative I could build around shoes that would be exciting for people.
I have to admit, it's like whenever I moved from the United States to Europe, the two things that I brought with me were all my favorite books and my shoes.
Well, then we are kindred because that's the only things I spend my money on. It's like books and shoes.
Yes, exactly. Although I do have to admit, I have a ridiculously large scarf collection too. So,
Okay, I like that.
how did you go from writing a book about shoes to writing one about diamonds?
Well, it felt kind of like a natural leap. The shoe book did resonate with people, and my agent and I were talking about what's another item that women are quote unquote obsessed with that no one has really given a serious look at.
Hmm.
And we started thinking about the diamond engagement ring. And obviously, diamonds are very loaded in a way that shoes aren't. There has been a lot of journalism about diamonds' effects on the environment, on, the socioeconomic implications of mining diamonds, on, conflict diamonds.
Hmm.
But there hadn't been a book that acknowledged kind of that diamonds are beautiful and glamorous also, that looked at the good, bad, and the ugly of diamonds. So that's what I set out to do. When I started researching the diamond engagement ring, I immediately found this ad campaign that De Beers had run starting in the late 1940s in the shadow of World War II. And it was intended to encourage American boys to buy diamond rings for their fiancés and for American girls to expect that.
Hmm.
So I got instantly really excited. This was like a real life Mad Men thing to me. And there were great characters. There were women, working on Madison Avenue, working on this diamond campaign. And that was my way in. I was really fascinated by all of that and really pulled in by the characters.
I can remember whenever I first heard that they had this expectation that whenever somebody would buy an engagement ring, that they would spend 3 months' salary. I always wondered where that number came from.
Well, it used to be two. So De Beers and this advertising agency called NW Air actually came up with that number, the 2 month salary. And a lot of the campaign, which spawned the tagline, "A diamond is forever,"
Hmm.
probably the most famous tagline in American advertising, possibly in advertising across the world, a lot of it was devoted to education. So some of the market research that they had done showed that people were very intimidated when it came to buying diamonds and that they really didn't understand the product and they felt that they were going to be taken advantage of by salespeople because of that.
Hmm.
So a lot of these ads, while they certainly intended to drill down on the glamour of diamonds and their beauty and their heritage, part of it was also teaching people about how to talk about diamonds, how to buy diamonds, so one of the ways was to come up with the four C's,
Hmm.
which was having really concrete ways for sellers and buyers to talk about diamonds together. And then another aspect of that campaign, which I believe started in the 1980s, was to tell people how much to spend because they were finding that men were going to buy diamonds and they were like, I have no idea what I'm expected to spend on a diamond. So De Beers and NWA came up with this kind of rubric of 2 months salary, which I guess was then lifted to 3 months salary, which sounds crazy. But in economic boom times, I guess you can get away with telling people to spend 3 months salary on diamonds.
Yeah. It seems like there should be just your personal taste that should be guiding what you're spending on things.
Well, and I think that's true now. I think we're seeing a lot more flexibility around what people want from their engagement rings, including not buying diamonds at all.
Hmm.
But yes, I mean, certainly anecdotally, even among my group of friends, I've found that people buy what they can afford in the moment. And so sometimes they upgrade, or sometimes they feel like, the ring is sentimental and who cares what size it is or what it looks like. So it really does vary from person to person.
And it seems like recently I've been seeing a lot more people going more for things like emeralds or sapphires and going more towards, birthstones. There's been a lot more variety, I think.
Yes, I think there's more personalization. I think people want something that reflects their own personal style and taste. And millennials kind of stereotypically are very interested in reflecting their own uniqueness too. So I think that's a part of it as well. However, the stats do bear out that diamonds still are kind of the king when it comes to engagement rings, that they haven't really been dethroned. So, yes, people are opting for colored stones or they're doing colored stones alongside diamonds, but in general, most people are still buying diamonds.
Well, they were pretty.
They're pretty and they're sentimental. whether or not this idea of giving a diamond engagement ring was invented by De Beers or invented by an ad campaign, it's still been entrenched in our culture now for 70, 80, 90 years.
Yeah,
So that doesn't take away from the tradition, I don't think. I mean, I think now like it is very much a part of the engagement ritual, and that's meaningful to people.
very much. Now, here, your first two books had to do with fashion. How did you end up transitioning into writing about Judy Blume?
A lot of people have asked me this question when I've been promoting my Judy book, and to me, they kind of are of a piece. Like, I understand that Judy isn't about style, but from where I was sitting, Judy Blume's books were another thing that were quite meaningful to so many women that had been dismissed or under-celebrated in our culture. So they were on a continuum with Shoes and Diamonds insofar as they were important to women. They had been dismissed as frivolous or not important or not literary. And I wanted to make a case for why Judy's books are important. You might not know that for much of her career, literary critics kind of were snide about her work and insisted that it wasn't adding very much to the canon and that her books were like junk food and that children would be better off reading the classics. So even though now we're in what the New York Times has called the Blumessance, it took a really long time for her and her work to be taken seriously. And to me, that was something that needed to be corrected.
I remember when I was in junior high, so many of my friends had Judy Blume books. I mean, there was probably not one person that had not read a book or at least knew about all of her books.
Yeah, I mean, when I started writing this book, I start this book by talking about how when women talk about Judy Blume, they get kind of like a glazed, faraway look in their eye, like they're recalling something really magical from their childhood, or like even, a former lover. Like there's something special about the connection between women and Judy Blume. And I wanted to understand what that was. There have been other writers who, even contemporary with Judy, were writing about the sort of bold things that she wrote about, like puberty, like sexuality. But Judy has become very sticky for people. She has become someone that people look at as defining their childhood or even like almost a parental figure. And I wanted to get to the bottom of that.
Growing up in the time that I did in the 70s, there were so many things that you did not talk about in polite society. And a lot of my friends got all of their basic information about what was happening to them in their life, in their body, from Judy Blume books.
Well, that's the thing. I think sometimes people forget that not very long ago, we didn't have the internet.
Hmm.
If you wanted to look something up, you went to the encyclopedias on your bookshelf if you had them. That what your parents were willing to tell you or what your teachers were willing to tell you was kind of the full extent of what you got in terms of knowledge. And for as long as people have been having sex, people have been uncomfortable talking about sex, right?
Yeah.
So Judy Blume broke so many barriers in making these topics approachable and available to children, right? Talking about Margaret wanting to get her period, wanting to grow breasts. These were things that just weren't in children's books. And I think it forged an immediate connection and trust between her readers and her. Children thinking, like, this is a woman that tells the truth. This is a
Hmm.
woman that's going to answer my questions when nobody else will. And Judy recognized that gap because her parents didn't tell her the truth about these things. She writes about how she was so curious about menstruation before she got her period, and her dad gave her this weird lecture about eggs and the moon that just completely confused her. She saw her mother buy a tampon in a bathroom at one point, and she asked what it was, and her mother just told her, like, you'll understand when you're older. So all of these things were shrouded in mystery for her, and being a curious kind of creative child, it wasn't satisfying. So when she started writing books, she thought to herself, these were the things I wanted to know as a kid, and she just put them down in stories for kids.
So, how much of this do you cover in your book?
Oh, a lot of it. I mean, this is what my book is about, right? It's about Judy tackling these kind of untrodden paths in children's literature, the reaction that that got from the media, the culture, critics at the time, from children, and then also how this dovetails with American feminism, which to me was kind of the eureka moment with this book, right?
Yeah.
When we think about second wave feminism, we think about Gloria Steinem, we think about Betty Friedan, we think about Susan Brown Miller. And I wanted to throw Judy's name in the mix. You know, I feel that Judy was doing something arguably as important as those women in that she was translating the messages of second wave feminism in real time for younger readers. And by doing that, she was kind of training the next generation to care about these things and to look at the world a little bit differently and to understand, particularly as girls, that we had different choices than our mothers did and how important that was. I really think that her legacy is really caught up in feminism in a way that hadn't quite been acknowledged directly.
And that's one reason why I really love that you have the timeline in the beginning of your book, so that you can actually see where all of these important events are happening. Because I honestly, whenever I was growing up in the 70s, I didn't think about her books having been written earlier. And in this time when all of these things were going on with like the National Organization for Women and these other books coming out like The Feminine Mystique, I wasn't thinking about her being in that context until I went through your timeline.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about that as a child at all, of course. But yes, you know, she published Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret in 1970. And the women's strike for equality was that same year, right? So this is happening in real time that she's publishing these books and sort of disseminating these ideas as they're coming out into the culture. And I thought that was really fascinating.
And extremely bold of her.
Really bold. And you have to give credit to her publisher as well, because she was working with a young publisher called Bradbury Press and an editor named Dick Jackson. And talk about the relationship between editors and writers. He really encouraged her and he allowed her to tackle some of these topics at a time when another editor might have said, this is a little much for a book that's meant to be read by children. He had a mission along with his business partner to create a different style of children's book that was targeting a specific reader that wasn't really being served by the market at that time. This is a reader that we'd now describe as like a middle grade reader or a YA reader, but that category didn't really exist.
Hmm.
And he let her write about what she wanted to write about for the most part. And so I think that the collaboration between the two of them allowed for some real bravery on both of their parts.
And she actually did face quite a lot of backlash during the height of her publishing era, where a lot of her books got banned.
They did. So it's really interesting. A lot of her most iconic books that we think of, and I'm talking about Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Deanie, Forever, Blubber. These books came out in the 1970s. But it wasn't until the late 70s and early 80s that they started being attacked. And that's because there was a new conservative movement kind of taking over in the US. And with the moral majority and the Eagle Forum, these were grassroots movements that targeted Judy Blume's books, much in the way that we're seeing happen now, that organizations like Moms for Liberty in the US are targeting children's books. So her books were really zeroed in on by these groups. Phyllis Schlafly's group actually circulated a pamphlet called How to Rid Your Schools and Libraries of Judy Blume. And then when Reagan was elected here in 81, Judy's books and book banning in general became a much bigger issue in this country. So she was actually America's most banned writer for a time, and not because she had the number one most banned book. I believe that was Catcher in the Rye, but because so many of her books were being targeted, which really took her off guard, particularly because some of these books had been in circulation for a decade.
Well, and I always agree with Stephen King when he says that whenever you see a banned book, go get it and read it. Because the point is, there is information in there that certain people do not want you to have.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's one of Judy's big arguments as well, is like once you ban a book, once a child learns that a book is banned, what do they want more than anything? They want to know what's inside of it. So
Hmm.
actually banning a book is adding more kind of allure to it than just ignoring it. But that doesn't mean that it's good for writers to be banned. And I want to be really clear about this because I think there's a misconception that if your book is banned, you're going to sell a zillion copies. But it's
Yeah.
actually it's completely emotionally devastating. And it was for Judy when she first started being banned, and it is for the writers who are being banned now.
Hmm.
So, yes, I agree with Stephen King. Like, go buy that book because someone in power doesn't want you to know what it says. But it's really, really upsetting for writers to be banned because writers today are being labeled pornographers when they're writing about coming of age experiences. Like, it's pretty dark.
Just writing about the human condition seems to be a problem sometimes.
It's very triggering for some people.
How has your publicity been going for you?
It went really well. I mean, the book came out in hardcover last July, so the book is almost a year old, but it came out in paperback in May. And I've been promoting the book for almost this whole year. So that's been fantastic. That is not a foregone conclusion when you publish a book. And I've been invited to talk about it so many cool places, in person, online. So it's been really satisfying.
Do you actually enjoy doing the marketing for your work?
Well, I enjoy the writing more, I'm not gonna lie. But I do enjoy talking with people who are interested in books, and that's lucky because it is part of the job. So I did a book festival in Savannah this past, I want to say February, and that was really delightful. I know that there are some writers for whom these book festivals are kind of old hat, but for me, it was one of my first big ones, and I got to meet all these writers that I admire and, be in community with people who love books, which was really exciting for me.
Oh, you need to come to the Frankfurter Book Mesa then.
Oh, I would love to. I would love to.
So we went for the first time last year, and I'm still in awe when I think about it. It is just massive, and the people there are amazing. It is incredible to see that many people coming out who are just in love with books. It's fantastic.
It's so encouraging, especially at a moment when, I think a lot of people are very down on reading,
Hmm.
A lot of people, even within the industry, are like, people don't read anymore, people don't buy books anymore. And going to a festival like that, you see that there are still people who just love reading and love books and love knowledge and love authors. And it's the best.
Oh, definitely. I cannot wait to go again. Now seems like a really good time to do our 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but I'm just a really nosy person and love asking these questions.
Respect. I am a nosy person as well.
I think that goes along with being a reporter.
Absolutely. You just have to ask the questions.
So now, question 1. What is something that you would still like to learn?
Oh man, I mean, so much stuff. Right now, I'm in the process of learning two things, so I'll tell you that. I'm doing French on Duolingo. I studied French up through college and then, never lived in a French-speaking country and lost it. So it's been really joyful for me to revisit the language, which I love, even though I have no intention of ever living anywhere that speaks French, but you never know. And my son has gotten me into crocheting, which is something that I never would have picked up on my own, but he started doing it in school and he's kind of a fidgety kid and it really like speaks to him. So I started doing it with him and now we're actually in the process of making a pair of shorts. And it's our first garment. And it's the coolest thing ever, like we're getting so excited. We just made a waistband and it feels like, oh my God, I'm like making this garment with my hands. This is such a lost art. So, yeah, those are two things that are kind of lighting me up right now.
That is so cool. I love that. I remember when I was a kid, my mother used to crochet dresses for me and my sister, and they were just the most adorable things. I cannot do anything like that, but I love when other people do it. I'm so in awe.
It's so funny because I have the dexterity that he's still working on as a 9-year-old, but
Mhm.
he has the brain that can read instructions and like actually process them, where I like zone out and get frustrated and I'm like, I don't know what this means. So he actually reads the instructions and will be like, this is what you need to do, mama. And then we'll do it together and we're like actually a very good team. So it's been really fun.
Oh, that is so nice. I love that. And I actually have just started to try and learn some French as well because we live next to Belgium and it's like a 2 hour drive to go into Belgium. So we've been going there on the weekends sometimes and I know no French. So I'm trying to learn some to be able to talk to people a bit better there. Luckily there everybody speaks English, so we can communicate that way, but I would like to learn French too.
It's funny because we are going to be in France for a few days, and I'm excited because I'm like, maybe I'll get to practice my French. But of course, in Paris, everybody switches to English once they hear your French accent as
Oh,
a
yeah.
non-native person. So I don't know how much I'll get to speak, but I'll be absorbing it. And we're watching Call My Agent, subtitled, of course, but it's in French, so I feel like I'm hearing a lot of it. I don't know. I don't know if I was French in a past life. Like this language really speaks to me.
I have just started, so I don't know if it speaks to me yet. I'm still having trouble with German, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure that's more pressing living in Germany.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a priority.
Right.
So question two, what is your favorite thing to do to relax when you have free time?
I love to, this is going to sound like I'm making it up, but I really love to work out. I love yoga and I've gotten into Pilates, and I feel like that's one of the first things I do when I know I have free time, which like I'll go to a class as opposed to just doing like mom aerobics in my living
Mhm.
room. And then also, I mean, I love to read. I'm always excited to have time to just like sit and read for pleasure.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's another thing that I'll do. If it's nice out, I love to be outside. I'll take a walk or I'll read outside, get a nice coffee. Like that all sounds very pleasurable to me.
Have you ever done the hot yoga?
No, I hate the hot yoga actually. So I should say regular temperature yoga. I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm going to pass out and I don't like that feeling.
There's a place around the corner from us that does hot yoga, and I keep thinking about going and trying it, but all of their classes are like an hour long, and it's about 90 degrees in there, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that for an hour.
Before we started recording, we were talking about, spotty air conditioning. And if I really want to do a sweaty yoga class, like I can just do yoga in my apartment. Like I don't
Yeah,
need to pay for that.
true, very true. Question three, do you have any bad habits when it comes to writing?
Hmm. I mean, I'm sure I do. I mean, I think that if I'm not really jazzed about something I'm writing, I'll put it off.
Hmm.
I don't really have blank page anxiety, but if I don't have like a lead for an article that I'm really excited about, because I work from home, I find a lot of things that really need to be done before I sit down, like I need to do the laundry and I really, really need to unpack that box that's sitting in
Hmm.
my hallway, or man, my closet is overflowing and I really need to clean it out. So, depending on how much I'm not jazzed about sitting down to write something, that's how many projects I will suddenly really urgently need to take on in my apartment.
Yeah, my apartment is never cleaner than when I have a project that I need to do that I'm not thrilled about.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like cleaner or organized, like, oh, I couldn't possibly write with my bookshelf looking this crazy, or like, wow, the recycling just really does need to go out at this
Uh-huh.
particular moment in time. So, yeah, that's probably my worst habit.
So, question four, what is one tip that you can give to writers as an editor to make their work better?
Don't overthink the writing of it. I think a lot of young writers get very caught up, and myself included, can get very caught up in making the writing quote unquote good.
Hmm.
They want the writing to stand out. And I think when you're first starting out, aside from developing your voice, one of the things that you really need to think about is structure, right? Telling a story, and the voice will come later. But I think what I see from writers who are fresh is they care so much about their voice, and then they're not thinking about what's the most engaging way to tell this story. What's the way that I'm going to frame the story and structure the story that it's going to be really appealing and easy for the reader. So think about your reader. Think about what your reader is going to want. It's not necessarily always about you and your writing, it's about telling a story. And that's something that I think I could have learned quicker.
Well, I have to say that in your book, The Genius of Judy, your writing style in this particular book happens to be very easy to read. It's very visual, it's very engaging, and I think you have definitely learned that lesson yourself.
Thank you so much. With this book in particular, I wanted to kind of pay homage to Judy and make it very easy for people to read. That's Judy's style. You know, that's one of the things that she was criticized for is not being literary, not being a flowery writer. But if you pick up a Judy Blume book, you can inhale it. It's so pleasant and easy to read. So I did want to kind of not necessarily absorb her style, but appeal to someone who likes a Judy Blume book, who is going to want to sit down and have fun reading.
I think you nailed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now your last question. Everybody is getting the same question 5 this year because we're building a author suggestion list that we're going to put in our book buying guide at the end of the year. Whenever somebody asks you, who would you recommend that I read? Who's the first author you go to?
Okay, so I'm looking at The Dry Season by Melissa Febos, which I just got in the mail. And she is one of my favorite nonfiction writers. I just think that, speaking of voice, she has such an incredible style and then also has so much to say about the experience of being a girl and a woman. So I would say if that's something that interests you, Melissa Febos would be a go-to writer. I'm a fan of hers. I ordered a signed copy of her book, and I think being a writer is so much also being a fan, right?
Oh, yeah.
Reading people who you admire, who sometimes you're jealous of, but
Yeah.
it's all a part of the job is to stay engaged with what other people are doing in the art form.
Well, and that's one of the things that I love about doing this podcast is I get to bring on all of these authors that I am really excited about their books and I want to find out more about it. And I just get to happen to share it with everybody who's listening.
Which is great. I mean, again, speaking of people that are interested in books, like I think that it's so wonderful that you have found an audience of people who actually want to hear authors talk about their work. It's very cool.
Well, and the one thing that we always try and focus on too is to bring out the humanity of the person behind the work. Because so many people see a book and they don't realize all the work and the love and the time and research and sacrifice that can go into putting out one book on the shelf.
You really can't write a book if you're not extremely excited about the topic. I
Hmm.
think that if you're not, it'll come across and it won't be successful. Like a book is such a labor of love. It's such a long undertaking. It's not compensated like other jobs. You
Yeah.
just really have to care so much about what you're saying.
I think if somebody really sat down and did the math to find out like how much you would have gotten paid per hour for all the work that you put into that one book, I think a lot of readers would be really shocked at what writers would be making.
I don't think I want to do that math equation.
It might be a
I'm
little
happy in my
depressing for us.
ignorance.
Because I've spoken to some authors who, their first book that they put out took them 20 years. 20 years of writing and revising and querying. And it took them that long to get that first book out. And then after that, things took off and got a little bit easier. But sometimes that process to get started can be long and grueling.
I think writing, like any other artistic endeavor, is you only do it if you can't not do it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you feel like your life isn't going to be complete if you don't do it. And I know that about myself, and it's not necessarily always a practical or even an easy thing, but it's
Hmm.
just like this is what I feel that I need to do with my time.
Well, I think even if I wasn't writing all this stuff down, I would still be writing stories in my head until the day I die.
Absolutely. 100%.
So now is a good time to remind everybody who you are and where they can find your work.
I'm Rachelle Bergstein. You can find me at my website, rachellebergstein.com. I have a Substack, which is following the book banning crisis and also just talking about pop culture, which is called Banner Year. It's on Substack. And I'm on all the typical social media channels. So please reach out. I love hearing from people.
And I definitely recommend that everybody goes directly to your website and checks out your selected writing because you have got some amazing articles on there. And I think people could spend an entire weekend going through some of these and just be highly entertained and
Oh, thank you
informed.
so much. I do try to entertain. I never lose sight of that it's, when you're asking someone to spend time with something that you've made, give them a good time.
Yeah. And I think you're doing a great job of that. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here with me today. This has been absolutely amazing.
Yes, thank you so much. What a great conversation.
So there you have it, folks. My interview with the incredible Rachelle Bergstein. I am absolutely serious when I suggest that you go to her website, rachellebergstein.com, and check out all of her additional articles that she has available on there. It is some fantastic reading, and you will not regret it. But then be sure to go get her book, The Genius of Judy: How Judy Blume Rewrote Childhood for All of Us. And don't forget, as always, we have put all of Rachelle Bergstein's contact information and find live links in the description of today's podcast so that you can very easily click and go and find all of her work and buy her book. Now, next week, I'm going to be talking with author Jason Brick about his book, There I Was When Nothing Happened: True Tales of Violence Prevention from Professionals in the Field. We had an incredible discussion about how to de-escalate situations, among other things. It was a fascinating interview, and you are really going to find some very interesting information in this interview, and I think you're going to love his book. We just have a couple of more authors in our Dose of Reality episodes, so be sure to check out all of the upcoming authors on our website at burkhartbooks.com/podcast. We've got some great ones coming up, and I'm getting ready to start adding our year-end episodes on there with, of course, all of our wonderful spooky titles coming up for the Halloween season. And then we'll start gearing up for the holidays with some wonderful books that we think will make great gifts for yourself or for somebody else. Now, in case you didn't check out last week's episode, I have been on a bit of a hiatus. Those of you probably know that I have been on bed rest for a while because I broke my leg while I was on vacation in Chile this year. And unfortunately, my sentence to bed rest was extended another 2 weeks. So hopefully I'll be able to get up and around come next Friday. Not this Friday, but the following Friday. It would be nice if I could actually get up and out of bed by the time my birthday rolls around later in September. There's always hope. But during this time, it's also been a little trying. I have been taking a big hiatus from most of the duties here at Book Banter Productions and at Burckhardt Books, because while I have been on bed rest, unfortunately, my father Steve, who is the face of Stephen Burckhardt, one of my pen names that I wrote the Into the West Saga serial under, went to hospice and passed away on August 25th. He was laid to rest yesterday, and I have put together a little memorial video that you can find at burkhartbooks.com/about-Stephen, because he will remain as the face of Stephen Burckhardt for all future book series, and we do have more series planned for our Western author on Burckhardt Books. And yeah, he's going to remain part of Burckhardt Books as long as it is in existence. So that will be our memorial for him from now on. Thank you to everybody who has reached out about this challenging time for us. And this brings us to the end of this wonderful podcast with Rachelle Bergstein. And I hope that you can all go forth and find something to be really happy about today.